This program is supported by South Carolina Humanities with the Federation of State and Territorial Humanities Councils through the Campfire Initiative, which was funded by grants from the Carnegie Corporation and the Mellon, Ford, and Knight Foundations to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Pulitzer Prizes in 2016. From the Jazz Age to the Digital Age, Pulitzer Prize winners in South Carolina. Celebrating Pulitzer Public Service journalism with the Charleston Post and Courier.
Welcome to our program celebrating Pulitzer Public Service journalism with the Charleston Post and Courier. I'm Charles Bierbauer. With me in the studio are members of the team of reporters who won the Pulitzer Prize in 2015 for their special investigative report, Till Death Do Us Part. I'm joined by Natalie Kolohoff, Jennifer Berry Hawes, and Glenn Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Welcome. So the series was called Till Death Do Us Part, published in August 2014, won the Pulitzer in 2015. What started this? Where does the story begin, Glenn?
The story began in the fall of 2013 when the Violence Policy Center in Washington, D.C. put out its annual rankings of the most dangerous state for women at the hands of men. Once again, South Carolina had come out on top of the list, number one in the nation, deadliest for the rate of women killed by men. And we prepared to do our annual story on this, reserve a little slice of the front page, do probably 15, 20 newspaper inches in it, call the usual suspects, and be done with it. And I just happened to be up to take the call to the Domestic Violence Coalition. The state had organized a call-in with some experts and folks familiar with domestic violence to discuss the problem and offer solutions. I called in, ended up having to wait 10, 15 minutes. They'd invited media from around the state to call in, but no one did. I ended up being the only person on the line, and I ended up talking to these folks for about 20 minutes, and it was really enlightening. And I got off the phone, and we started talking in the newsroom about, have we got so numb in this state to being at the top of the list that this no longer surprised anyone, that this was no longer news? We looked back, we had been in the top 10 every year for 15 years. We had been number one 3 times, and we started a newsroom-wide conversation about why is this so? I mean, what factors, what makes South Carolina so different that this is an issue?
What was the reaction in the newsroom, Jennifer?
Well, I think for a lot of us, we realized that it was a big story that was sitting right in front of our eyes. It was something that had obviously been a huge problem for a long time. So the thinking was, how do we take a deeper look at this that brings something to the table that people don't realize? Because obviously on some level we didn't realize it ourselves. We had not done this deeper dive for years, and it had been a problem. So we sat down and tried to organize into some areas that would be obvious to look at. Things like the culture of the state, what role religion might play in it. We sat down and wanted to take a look at what areas of the state might be most impacted, what types of women might be most impacted. And it really just started from a conversation in pretty general terms.
The series starts out in the early words of it, talking about South Carolina as awash in guns, saddled with ineffective laws, lacking enough shelters for battered women. Did it become apparent at a certain point that this was more than an ordinary story? It wasn't just, as Glenn suggests, that one-day story?
I think so, especially when we started to collect that data. What we did is we put together a database, and when we put all of those women who had been killed on paper and started to include more information, that's really when we noticed the severity of the problem. And then when we started to notice those causes, those root causes, and went into them deeper, such as the legislation and why all these bills could not make it out of the State House, we realized how big a problem it really was. But I don't think it was until we all sat down and Glenn and Doug started writing that first paragraph where they knew that that language of that first paragraph had to be strong to represent it.
Doug would be Doug Pardue, who's not able to be with us here this evening. Could you kind of break it down? I mean, you were part of the core of this. A lot of people, I guess, were involved. What did you do? What was your role?
So I was covering courts and crime at the time, and Glenn Smith brought me in to do a lot of the data analysis. So they had started with very basic information that the South Carolina Attorney General's office had provided us, that it was a report that they provided every year on the women that had been killed. So we started putting it into a database, and this Center for Investigative Reporting had provided some training, and I had had some previous experience with Excel and some research and development, and so they set me down to do that training, and I started doing a lot of the analysis, adding fields, and starting to figure out where the patterns were. And then I also started a separate database to collect all of the bills that had been introduced and had never made it out of the State House, and so we wanted to know.
Can you put a number on that? How many times did it come up for before the legislature?
I don't remember I mean, it was at least a dozen. We only looked at the last 2 or 3 years as far as the bills were concerned.
It's about a dozen, yeah.
Yeah, about a dozen, and most of them got stuck, we realized, in the Judiciary Committee. And so then I started rounding up Judiciary Committee members and starting to call them, and so I called a lot of the legislators and tried to get answers as to why these bills were not being passed.
Jennifer, what was your role?
So I was the religion writer at the newspaper at the time, and my task was primarily to look at the culture of South Carolina, what role religion played in domestic violence, and also try to get at the question of why do women stay in these relationships, because at its heart that was a core of the problem. There was, I think, a lot of misunderstanding about that. In fact, there was a famous quote by the late John Graham Altman, where he was asked after debating one of these bills, and he said the woman ought not stay with the man. And it generated quite a bit of controversy, but I think really underscored what a lot of people thought was, well, why do they stay with these men? Why, this is really a problem that has to do with the woman, and why is she in this relationship? She should just leave. And so we really tried to get at those more nebulous issues at play.
That's blaming the victim.
It is, and I think that it's something that when stated quite like that, people would say, oh no, I don't agree with that. But I think in the heart of hearts, most of us still wondered, why do they stay in those relationships?
Do you come to any conclusion as a result of the investigation you've done?
Well, a couple things really to me were big takeaways. One is that a big factor with a lot of the victims is that they truly love these men, and they truly believe that they're going to become the man they married, the man they think they could be if only he stopped drinking, if he stopped doing drugs, if I stopped making him mad, if I clean the house better, fill in the blank of what it is. But I think they start to really believe this man lives in there somewhere, and if I can just get to him again, then everything will be okay, and my marriage will be preserved, my family will be preserved. But obviously, too often that ends with the woman killed. So love, but also fear. Most women who are killed after they attempt to leave the relationship or when they file charges. And so fear clearly is a big factor. And there's infinite number of other complexities that play a role, but those were two biggies.
Glenn, your part?
I was the editor in charge of the team, but I'm also sort of like a player coach, so I was reporting as well.
I've heard that line before.
Yeah, from Spotlight. I have a long career in crime reporting, so I'm very familiar with the crime in court. So I spent a lot of my time attending court hearings, seeing how the domestic courts played out, talking to police, talking to prosecutors, talking to victims advocates. Doug and I both spent a ton of time in domestic violence courts just watching the assembly line justice that was going on in a lot of these places. We'd heard, the courts aren't getting the job done, the laws aren't getting the job done, and we looked at the laws and saw where, first offense for domestic violence, you'd get 30 days in jail maximum. You get 5 years in jail for abusing your pet. And we said, well, geez, why is that? And we walked in and, we had also heard that folks had been convicted multiple times of domestic violence first offense. Well, how could that be? Well, you see, they would plead to lower charges, they would plead to something else and get into an anger management program, the charge would be erased. I was in one hearing where this guy had been brought before the judge because he had not attended his anger management counseling, and they brought him in shackles, and the judge says, why weren't you attending the training? And he said, well, something came up, and a police officer stood up and said, well, what came up was he broke into his girlfriend's house and beat her up again.
Is there a leniency in the court system? Is there a tolerance? Is there a flaw in the court system itself?
I think they've passed some laws to introduce a tiered system now, so it tries to get at the level of offense, the repeat offender, and look at cases more individually. I think that just the size of the docket, just how overloaded the courts are, played a great part in it. Also, in a lot of these smaller courts, they don't have prosecutors. They have police officers standing up and prosecuting the cases against seasoned defense attorneys. So I don't know if it's a lack of caring as much as just the enormity of the problem funneling through there, and they're trying to put people in different slots and get them some help, but oftentimes it doesn't result in a lot of justice. We found in our area courts, when we formed another database, looked at that, some 60% of cases in some cases were getting dismissed, and at the state level it was like 50% of felony cases.
Jennifer?
One other thing is that when we were working on this series at the time, criminal domestic violence first offense carried a maximum penalty of 30 days, and that's a maximum penalty. So if the perpetrator is locked up just for potentially a couple of weeks, that doesn't give a victim time then to go to get out of the house, to find a job, to move, to relocate her children, all of the things that it's going to take to get out of that relationship. So one thing that we tried to hone in on was that it's simply not enough. And then you see these offenders who have multiple CDV first offenses on the record, and you know something is not working right. But they did pass domestic violence reform after our project ran to increase some of those penalties, but at the time it was only 30 days for a CDV first offense.
I want to get to some of these consequences, but there's one thing I wanted to come back to you first, Jennifer. You talked initially about what the role and what the connection with religion was. What did you discern?
Well, one of the things that I did early on was I sent out an email just to a wide range of pastors that I knew who were sources of mine, and I asked them, how many times have you talked about domestic violence in your pulpit and whatnot? And the responses I received back essentially were that almost never. And it just so happened that while we were doing research for this, there's a Christian research group that put out a large national study that looked at how often pastors speak about domestic violence in their churches. This happened to target Protestant pastors, and 42% of the pastors that they surveyed had never or rarely spoken about it from their pulpits.
So they were tacitly enabling this.
You could make that argument. And they also, of the ones who did talk about it, only 25% of those said it was a problem in their particular church. So you start to see that there's a lack of recognition of the severity of the problem within the church, and particularly in South Carolina, where people turn to the church often for answers to social problems. And Natalie talked with one of the lawmakers who said, people, we need more Jesus in people's lives. And while you understand on some level the idea that faith can be a very something that can really motivate somebody to try to do good, on the other hand, to leave a problem that's essentially a criminal justice problems at the hand of a pastor's doorstep is in some ways faulty thinking, because this is ultimately a criminal offense, not something that is going to be solved by the church. And to your point about tacit approval, for a lot of pastors, I think they didn't know what to do. They had couples come to them, or a woman would come to them. I don't think they knew how to reach out to law enforcement. I don't think they understood at what point it was a problem they should call law enforcement in to become involved with. So it was just, it seemed to be sort of a general lack of awareness and understanding of what to do when it came to their attention.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the process. Natalie, you talked about building the database. So from a journalistic perspective, how do you take on something of this scale?
It was really about starting small and then building upon it and looking for patterns and following those patterns. So we started with the South Carolina Attorney General's office, a report that came out every year with the women that were killed. And basically it's a white piece of paper with the photo. Most of them had the photo of the woman, their name, and where they were killed, and a short sentence. So we started to input all of those for the last 10 years into the database. And we started to realize what pieces we would need to include in that to look for patterns if there were any. So we wanted to know what time of day, if there was a weapon used, if there was a weapon used, what kind of weapon was used, had the offender had prior criminal domestic violence offenses. And so we really had a lot of empty parts of the puzzle, but we had that core with that report, and we started to call and do FOIA requests for as many incident reports, you know, the traditional mean of doing that.
That's when you get into traditional journalism that makes you got to get on the phone, you got to get out, you got to dig through the records. You had to have, and as a journalism professor, I'm encouraged by this. You had to have full support of the Post and Courier to invest this much time in investigative journalism. How was the paper?
Paper's been great. I mean, our executive editor, Mitch Pugh, and our publisher, P.J. Browning, and Pierre Manigault, the chairman of the board, they all believe strongly in community journalism and doing long-form stories that matter. We're not just in this to just throw out little tidbits every day. We want to get at the really core issues and make a difference in people's lives. For a paper our size, to have a 4-person project staff that works on long-term investigative pieces is kind of unheard of, and they just tremendous support. Newsroom as a whole, I mean, Natalie, when I'd have to pull her off of the crime or courts beat to help out and work on the database, that meant somebody else had to pick up that slack. And when Jennifer came off, someone else had to fill that religion page. So it was a team effort across the newsroom, and we work with a great group of people, real committed staff. They all see the value in it, and they all pitch in when they need to.
The reason you get a Pulitzer for public service is that something comes out of what you've done. It's not just that you reported it, but there's a consequence and a beneficial one. You mentioned Mitch Pugh, the executive editor. He's quoted as saying, "To see our infamously intransigent state legislature jump into action was deeply rewarding." So this is after the legislature takes action. What did they do? Jennifer?
Well, the legislature took, there was a bill proposed that basically would do a number of things. One is that it would increase penalties and change the structure of the penalty system for domestic violence offenses. It also took away gun ownership rights from abusers, from convicted abusers. And that piece in particular was very challenging to pass the General Assembly in South Carolina.
What's the time frame for that? So your stories come out. When do you start to see action in the legislature?
Well, that happened fairly quickly, as I recall. The Bobby Harrell came out.
That was even before we published. The word was getting around. We were calling and asking some tough questions, and Bobby Harrell, former House Speaker, he called us up and said, you know, we understand there's some concern here. I'm going to appoint an ad hoc committee to get right on this while the legislature's out of session. We kind of expected some blowback a little bit from the lawmakers, because we were kind of hard on them in some of the stories. And some of them, I think Larry Martin, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, we held the Judiciary Committee to a pretty high standard. We came down on them quite a bit in this. And he jumped right in and proposed legislation, fought for it throughout the session. So by the time they convened in January, reconvened, they already had some legislation in the pipeline. They had other stuff on the way, and they worked through it.
And the bill was signed in June.
It was.
By the governor.
We found out, we were at the Pulitzer ceremony, we were outside the library at Columbia, and either Doug Pardue or Mitch Pugh was looking at his phone and said, they passed the bill. And we all, it was such an exciting moment. I feel like we were more excited at that moment than inside the ceremony. But it was fantastic just knowing that had made a difference.
So the Pulitzer and passage coincided.
Yes, within literally at the same time period.
That's
because
justice, isn't it?
Yeah, it seemed that way.
Justice for journalists.
Convenient justice.
In some regard. So now what? What's happened since? Go ahead, Jennifer, and then.
Well, the bill passed and the governor signed it. Governor Haley also appointed a task force that's been looking at a large number of issues involved, everything from looking at cultural issues to law enforcement, criminal justice type issues. That's still ongoing. And there's been some request for additional prosecutors across the state to help address the docket overload that Glenn was talking about. That remains a question in the General Assembly now, so we'll see. And then there's a lot of those less quantifiable results. I think that we've all, as we've gone out and talked to people after the series ran and all of the follow-ups and the legislation that was passed, where you hear from victims who I think feel as if they've been given a voice that they didn't have before. And I think for me personally, that's probably the most rewarding aspect of this whole thing, is that these are, and I'll say women because most domestic violence victims are women, but obviously there's
Not
also men.
exclusively, but most, yes.
Yeah.
To be sure, there are male victims as well. That to hear them say, this was something that nobody believed me, or I thought I was alone, or I didn't think anybody cared. And to realize that we also didn't, for years and years, do much about it ourselves. I think to hear their thanks, if that's even the right word, is very rewarding, because I know that after the series ran, even in my own personal life, a number of people that I know pretty well came to me and told me about their own experiences, either in their own marriages or with their parents, and you realize it really is something that's everywhere. And I think that for our whole team, that I think we all really felt very passionately that this is something we could make a difference in, and that we really should make a difference in. And I think, to Natalie's point, standing on the steps of the library then to see all of that coalesce, it didn't look like that bill was going to pass the House. And so when we heard that, it was really a sense of, okay, this is why we went into this business. This is why I believe strong newspapers are important, and strong TV news, but I'm in the newspaper business, so I feel like strong journalism is
strong
very
journalism
important.
is sort of encompassing,
Yeah.
if you would. Yeah. Natalie, what was your sort of sense as you get beyond the Pulitzer and the passage, and where are we now?
It's certainly a moving piece, and they've done a great job of following up with and making sure that they kept that pressure on the legislature, and again, just the individual stories. And I know that Glenn's been approached by individuals who have, expressed their gratitude. But really, it's just like Jen said, just knowing what a difference it made in the long run, and just the experience that we got from it. I mean, working with Jen, Glenn, Doug, and everyone in the newsroom was an amazing experience. And what we absorbed as reporters from people like Glenn and Doug was a huge teaching experience for me personally.
What would you tell an aspiring reporter? I'll take this back to my class, but go ahead.
The key to Pulitzer?
Sure.
It really was, I think chemistry had a lot to do with it. We were talking about this earlier, that each of us brought a different talent to the table. And I had a little bit of database experience, and I helped a lot with the videos with our great videographer, Chris Henslotsky, and Jen with her experience in just great narrative and feature writing. We all brought these different pieces, and it was about working together. But it's just about that passion. And if you don't have that passion, then there really is no point in doing it.
Where are you now, Glenn? What is an ongoing component of this? Is there more to this, or do you move on to another big thing?
Well, I think you definitely keep an eye on this, because it's been a huge problem for so many decades. It would be so easy for us to slip at. What's really neat is it's part of the conversation finally. It was very much, not so cliche, but a silent epidemic. People just didn't talk about it much, and now it's part of the conversation, and folks really seem intent on getting us down from the top of that list. So you got to keep the pressure on there, but there's so many other things. Like Doug will always say that South Carolina oftentimes ends up being on the top of the list, so you don't want to be on the top of and the bottom of the ones you do. So there are a number of problems and challenges facing our state. Great place to live, but plenty of challenges out there to look at.
And I've got to ask this because the coincidence is too great. The movie Spotlight came out last year, won the Oscar this year. It's about investigative reporting. It's about good reporting done at the Boston Globe, and in some ways a similarly purposefully obscured issue with the Roman Catholic priests and sexual abuse. So does that overshadow you to some degree, or does that enhance the kind of investigative reporting you've been doing?
I think people are talking about journalism. I mean, people are excited to say, look at these reporters and what they're doing. It's best picture of the year. That's great. It's inspiring new people. Like when I was growing up watching all the President's Men and some of those movies, it's getting people interested in a job that really matters. And it also, I think, it inspires some of the folks working in the field, where there was that moment in Spotlight where they realized that this epic story they're working on, this important story, had been handed to them a few years back, and they just hadn't paid attention to it. And the guilt and the need to sort of rectify that was so strong, and I think we felt the same way, and that this domestic violence crisis had been right in front of everybody's face for so long, and we finally did something about it. So there's, in newsrooms all across the country and all across the state, anyone can make that difference. You just got to put your sights on it.
Jennifer?
I think, I think that good journalism has been out there. I think that the issue is that there's a lot of, there's sometimes negative comments about the press, and the press is certainly not perfect. But I think that what it has done is drawn attention to good journalism, to investigative journalism, and the kind of public service work that we've been talking about tonight. That is really why most journalists go into this field. Most journalists don't go into journalism because they want to be rich, or they want to have regular hours, or they want to be sure they can make their 6 o'clock dinner with their husband.
Yeah, certainly not.
My husband will tell you that is not correct. But I think that most of us go into this profession because we want to do something meaningful in our communities, and I feel like people see that more. After we won the Pulitzer, my children both came home and told me that friends of theirs at school had seen it and had said something to them, and I really felt like the community felt proud of that in Charleston, that it wasn't just about us or about the Post and Courier, that it was about doing something positive in our community.
Keep doing positive things in your community. Jennifer Berry Hawes, Natalie Kalahoff, Glenn Smith, thank you very much for being with us. Thanks to the Post and Courier for letting you do this good work. And thank you all for being with us this evening.
This program is supported by South Carolina Humanities with the Federation of State and Territorial Humanities Councils through the Campfire Initiative, which was funded by grants from the Carnegie Corporation and the Mellon, Ford, and Knight Foundations to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Pulitzer Prizes in 2016.